Hello and welcome, folks. My name is Ryan Chapman, the SANS author of Forensics 528, Ransomware for Incident Responders. And this is the first episode of something we're trying to do here that we hope you all like, called Staying Ahead of Ransomware. The idea is to have at least a monthly, if not potentially bi-monthly down the line, conversation concerning all things ransomware, why you should be aware of X, Y, and Z because of where you work, the things that you do, the processes your business is involved in, all the things to relate ransomware to you directly. So with me here today on the first episode, we have special guests, Heather Mahalik, and we also have Mary DeGrazia. Both of them, I'm extremely, extremely happy that you're here, and thank you very much. Mary, folks may not know just yet, but she is going to be a 528 instructor. So very soon here, in fact, I believe now, is that correct, Mary? You can sign up for a class with you?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. If you want to go ahead and just give a quick intro for you two, Mary, if you want to say hi, and then we'll go through Heather.
Hello, my name is Mary DeGrazia. I'm also a forensics 5-4. Wow, it's too early in the morning for me right now. A 4-500 class, Windows Forensic Analysis. I also teach that class as well, and I'm really looking forward to diving into ransomware and teaching the 528, as I think this is something that is just really prevalent within the industry. So I'm really excited to be here, and thanks for having me, Ryan.
Awesome. Thanks for being around. Many folks may also not know that Mary and I live close to each other geographically and have presented at the same conference local to the Arizona area for many years. We go back. So having this now teaching the same course is like a full circle, pleasant surprise. Pretty cool. So Heather, hi, who are you? Who's Heather?
Hello. Hello. I am not teaching the Forensics 528. I don't have ransomware experience. I am here for moral support. I'm Heather Mahalik. I'm the D4 curriculum lead at SANS, and I do teach. I'm a faculty fellow instructor, but my trade is mobile forensics. But I am here to support 528 because I have to answer all the questions from sales and everyone that comes in. And I must note, I'm in Paris teaching, and it is late in the day, so I am enjoying a glass of wine.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Anyone familiar with SANS, like, did he just ask who Heather is? Like, So, all right, we're going to try to keep these to 25 to 30 minutes-ish. We'll see if we can get some questions and answers in there, potentially. I think we have the ability to do that currently. So, wherever you're watching this stream, thank you for being here. And I just want to jump right into the overall topic at hand today is that I say the media a lot of times. People are like, who do you mean the media? I don't know, the media. The media seems to portray, and people en masse kind of believe that ransomware is going away, that it's dying, that it's no longer a threat. And that couldn't be further from the truth. So there are some reasons as to why people believe that. And there are some reports out there and some great blog articles. I'm going to reference some very shortly here. However, when it really comes down to it, the groups are still evolving. They're changing their tactics. They don't want to die. And they feel that there is an impact to the overall business. It's an ecosystem, right? A business ecosystem. And they've recognized that. And we want to talk through what that is, what they're doing, and why ransomware is not dying. So we called this episode the top 5 misconceptions about ransomware. And I just want to start off, first off, with ransomware is dying. So I just want to throw some numbers out. I have, first off, my day job is Palo Alto Unit 42, and we just released our ransomware report today, actually. So in fact, it may not even be out yet. It may be out very, very shortly. But the new ransomware report's coming out. I have statistics from a different location. It's a site called ecrime.ch, and I'll pop it in the chat. I think this may just go to the studio. Someone can share that where it needs to be shared. Ecrime.ch is my personal favorite. I really trust the work that they do. They scrape the data leak sites. So in the class, we talk about data leak sites, DLS. Some of the groups call them a blog. Some of them call them they're just their web page. Some of them call them their partner portals. It's where they shame their victims is what it is. So on these sites, the threat actors, when they will self-report and say, hey, we've compromised so-and-so, and they post that and it becomes public knowledge. That's the data we're talking about right now. This has nothing to do with all of the undisclosed incidents that never make it to the public's view, right? Some of us in the industry, like consultants such as myself, may see these types of things, but we can't, oh yeah, group so-and-so got hit. No, that's all NDA. You can't talk about that. So the public awareness, the public posting just from the threat actors themselves was 2,600 and around 70-ish for 2022. So that's a lot of ransomware incidents. And again, has nothing to do with the unreported incidents. A part of that you need to understand is that a lot of these that are being reported, if they're being reported by the threat actor, it may be because they have not been successful in communication with the victim, or as they call their partner sometimes. So if they're successful in communicating and actually potentially get a payment rendered, sometimes they just won't go onto these data leak sites. So if you happen to have these various entities, tools, like one is called Ransom Watch. You can go to for528.com/ransomwatch. And I'm putting them in our chat, and I think someone will push that over to the right chat here. Another one is Ransom Look, and another one is Dark Feed. It's /Dark Feed. So these are shortened links for the class, by the way. These are publicly available sites that do the scraping. Looking at the scraping site, ecrime.ch, I'm going to set this to last year for 2022 and just let this bad boy refresh and just throw some numbers out, and then we can kind of just talk through some of these things. So we've got a number of 2,670. Some reports have, plus or minus 20. You'll see different visibility. I know the person who runs this site, he's fantastic. He does a lot of work himself, and I see him throughout the day doing it. So I was going to say I take a lot of pride in his work. What? That doesn't make any sense. But it's kind of like, Freudian slip there. I do. I love his work, and I like to stand behind it. So the top 10 sectors, we have construction, hospital and healthcare, government administration, IT services, and IT consulting as one group. And then rounding out the top 5 is law practice. Ugh, just imagine having law practices being hit and the amount of confidential information that they have warehoused that just becomes not so confidential anymore. And then number 6, automotive, financial services, higher education, insurance, and real estate. So those are the top 10 targeted sectors from this particular point of view. So we have a lot of ransomware still going on, right? Why do people think it's dying? Well, we'll throw out some ideas, and then Mary, I'll call on you to jump in with your thoughts. For me, one of the big things is the conflict in Ukraine. So many of these ransomware operators are Russian speaking. As I said, Russian speaking. I'm not outright stating that they are Russian or that they live in quote unquote Russia, but they're Russian speaking. And some of them actually, when the conflict first began, they came out and made statements and said, hey, we are Russian and this is what we stand for. And if you come against Russia, we will come at you with the force of all we have, and yada, yada, yada. One of the groups that did that made a little bit of a boo-boo, and that was the Conti group. At the time, they were the biggest and baddest. One of the biggest. Some people will say Lockbit was bigger. I think Conti was the bigger threat. Personally, no big deal. So when Conti was, putting themselves out there, like, we stand for this, they didn't realize that some of their affiliates and some of their internal people, basically, right, if you want to say their employees, were Ukrainian. And one of those individuals said, no, and ended up leaking out all of their data. And essentially, Conti stopped using the Conti brand very shortly after. The whole Ukrainian conflict thing, and with all the people, in the United States especially, starting to realize, wait a minute, if we render these payments, where exactly are they going? And what might they be used for? That may have always been kind of, now it's just more in the forethought, basically, because of that conflict. So, okay, Mary, what do you think about just general, the thought of ransomware is dying?
Yeah, it's definitely not. I mean, we saw, like you said, a point in time where it definitely, as a consultant, things seem to get really slow. It's like, what is going on with ransomware? So, just like everything else, when we see all these major events happen, even with like COVID, the war, when things first kind of happen, there's this knee-jerk reaction, things slow down, but, life kind of starts to get back to normal for us and threat actors. So, these things that were first popping up, it was getting slow for a few months, but then as they're probably trying to normalize their lives around them and get back to things as they were, we started to see it spin right back up again. And I feel like now we're right back in the throes of this, almost like nothing has changed, because people are getting back to their jobs. And for those threat actors, that is their job, their bread and butter, and what they do. So it is definitely not going anywhere. It's spinning back up, and we're having, I don't want to say fun, well, maybe a little bit of fun, chasing them down and kind of starting. I always think of that cartoon. What is it? Was it Wile E. Coyote and the sheep herder? Like, they clock in at the beginning of the day and they're fighting each other, and then at the end of the day they clock out. That's kind of like what it feels like to me. They took a little bit of a vacation for a month or two, and then all of a sudden they're clocking back in, and things are spinning back up, and we're clocking back in, and we're going head to head over the ransomware with the threat actors.
I'm so stealing that analogy. I'm gonna go look at the exact. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I love that, because honestly, they often will work 9 to 5. Their local time. You'll see the activity kind of whoop 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 like that. So I love that. One of the things that ransomware groups are doing, and it's becoming very bothersome for folks such as ourselves and all of you, it should be, is they're not all of them. Some of them are moving away from the encryption phase. So rather than having as the final form of impact within the attack, right? They get in, they start escalating privileges, they establish persistence, they tool executions and lateral movement and blah, 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 blah. Eventually we get to like, what do they really want to do at the end there, right? Well, they want to steal your data. That's one of the things that the Maze group in around early 2019, they made that popular. They made it popular. They weren't the first group to do it, but they were the ones who made it very, very popular. We're going to extort you not just with, hey, do you want your computers and your network and all your systems back? But by the way, do you also not want us to divulge everything you thought was private? Like, ooh, yeah, we don't want you to do that. Some groups are now moving to, you know what? Forget the encryption stuff, because that's getting us caught, and that's getting us kicked out of the environment earlier than we'd like, or it's basically just too much of a hassle. It's taking too much time. We can carry out more operations. So the big groups that started doing this, that became popular doing it, were Karakurt, which is an offshoot of Conti, by the way. And then when Conti disbanded because of their little data leak, massive data leak, by the way. And by the way, if you go to for528.com/share, and I'll put that in my chat, and I think someone's pushing this to the right place, we'll go like that. We have a data share. It's actually a Dropbox. So shout out to Dropbox. they don't know where I'm using it, possibly. But anyway, if you go to leaks, there's a folder in there called leaks. And if you go to Conti, you'll see some of the Conti leaks stuff. I couldn't share it all there because of some of the things that were in those leaks, but you can see quite a bit of their communication style, how they're organized, things they share back and forth. Anywho, when they disbanded, Karakurt came into play, and that was one of the places where some of them went. And Karakurt is all about data extortion. That's what they do. And another team well known for this is Ransom House. And we're starting to see other groups evolve to this. And this is what's worrisome. So we have Klopp, who's been around for quite a while now, and then also Beyond Leon. And the team over at Redacted has done a great job with the Beyond Leon documenting the evolution of that group, looking at their actual malware payloads and looking into them moving into data extortion. So the data extortion is, your entire environment is still available, but then you still have this extortion threat looming over your head of, wow, everything that we hold sacred and private is no longer sacred or private. So Mary, are you seeing much of that? Any comments on the just moving from encryption to just taking your data?
Yeah, I think there's probably a couple of reasons why they did that. Like, one of the reasons I can think of is, I have these tools that I put out on GitHub, and you have like the support and everything. And I know, ransomware providers, I guess is what, I don't know. We got to give them like this nice business name now. They have to support those decryption tools, right? Like, they pass the decryption tools on to the client. I know a lot of times, our clients or, someone acting on behalf of clients, they'll log in, they'll have problems with the decryption tools. So they have to support a decryptor, provide customer support for that decryptor. So getting in and just doing the data exfiltration, is probably less work for them. Some other things that I've seen them do as well is, rather than encrypt an entire environment, they will go specifically look for a database server where they know has the most critical data, and they will just destroy that or get rid of it, or just take the data from that. So they're getting very targeted in what they're doing. So like you said, rather than encrypting every server with the environment that can be easily rebuilt, they might go in and find the database server and the data that has all the client data going back for 10 years, or a very critical system. So they're getting a lot more sophisticated in what they're doing so that it has a larger impact on the organization. So it's no longer, okay, we can just rebuild our servers, get back up and running and restore from a backup. It's like, well, now we have to talk to them, because there's no way we can recreate this database that has 10 years of information that is very critical to what our organization is doing. So they're figuring out these ways that will greatly impact the business with the least amount of effort on their end. So, they can get out there and target even more companies and make more of a profit doing this.
Yep. Heather, hey.
Hi, can I ask a question? And it's a good follow-up to what Mary was just saying. And I was asked this question at dinner this week. If everyone is paying the ransom, or most people pay it, why do you still need to take this training or learn how to mitigate or get through ransomware investigations? And I see there's questions on it too, like case scenarios. Why?
I'm so glad you asked that question. So the reality of the situation is very different from and this is another, in fact, I should have made this one of the top 5 misconceptions. Tell you what, I'm dropping one of the ones I had. This is now, I totally should have mentioned this. People, whoever people are, all the people out there, tend to believe that if you pay the ransom, you'll be up and running, and that you'll be up and functional, as in that you'll just be able to go, boop, click a button, and then yay, right? No. First off, when you're hit with ransomware, typically you don't want to put systems that have been impacted, as in maybe not just a standard network type 3 logon over to the system with a net used, right? But rather an actual RDP session over to it, or multiple attacker tools running on it, like quote unquote compromise. We have, some of us in the industry have a difference between accessed and compromised. You don't want to put those machines back in the environment. You never want to put an Active Directory controller, for example, a DC, a domain controller. You never want to put one of those back into the environment. You almost always want to rebuild them, and then you synchronize off of a primary PDC or something. You don't want to chance any of the, well, it looks like we caught everything, we cleaned it up for the most part, and like we're just going to put that back into prod. No, don't do that. So the cleanup, even if you do pay in that regard, is still oftentimes almost the exact same, if not very, very hefty, as you would be doing if you didn't pay the ransom. On top of that, many people don't realize that the decryptors are not necessarily fast. So in the Colonial Pipeline attack that the United States suffered at the hands of, I'm blanking, DarkSide, right? Is it DarkSide? Someone in the chat seemed like, how do you do that? I think it's DarkSide. I'm just blanked out right now. Their decryptor was so slow that the response team involved had to write their own decryptor and basically take that key out and put it in there and try to use that. And another example that we use in class is the HSE, the Conti attack on the HSE environment, the Health Services Executive, which was run by PwC. They were down for a period of months, even after obtaining a decryptor. So when they obtained a decryptor, and I just scrolled away, there it is. So basically saying that on March, ransomware, right? They obtained keys in the very next month, and it took them, 4 months. And by the way, you can go to FOR528.com/HSE, and that will link directly to an article here. It's a hefty fella, 157 pages of a PDF, but you'll see that you can pay and just not at all be able to restore quickly. But what about Mary? Have you have experience with that? Seeing people get decryption keys and then just, oops.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things I'm very clear, when I start talking to clients and we're scoping the case, and I, explain to them, it's like, hey, look, when you get that decryptor, that does not mean it's going to be your magic bullet and you're going to be up and running, overnight. I think someone may have said, you typically look at decrypting 1 terabyte of data per 24 hours. That's single process, right? If you've got multiple processes kicking off. The other thing is too, it's really important to understand, even if you're paying that ransomware, you need to understand how that threat actor got into the environment so that you can secure things moving forward. A lot of times threat actors will do something like supply a file listing directory of what they took when they were in the environment. We have received file listings that belonged to probably somebody else that they ransomware. Like, they're not always organized and they don't always provide the right things. So even though the client has paid the ransomware, the information that they're getting back from the threat actor that they thought was going to be accurate, okay, we need to understand everything that they took. And we're like, wait a minute, I see other organizations' names in this directory listing. Do you have this? No, we don't have that. So really understanding, how that threat actor got in, what they may have done while they were in the environment, what they may have touched. Even though you pay the ransomware, that is not always going to answer those questions. So they're really important to know so that moving forward, an organization can secure themselves better. Did they exploit an Exchange server? Did they come in through a phishing email? Do we need to take steps so that moving forward, we're educating our end users on, how to identify phishing emails? Do we have a firewall that is defunct that we didn't know about, that was sitting on the perimeter that let them get in? So all of these questions, the threat actors too, I've noticed sometimes they'll issue a report that you get with the ransomware payment on how they got into the environment. And sometimes they'll mention something, a resource or a way that they got in that the client doesn't even have within their environment. So, sometimes they just have this generic, maybe 5 or 6 ways that they usually get in, and they'll just maybe copy and paste that into a document and like, here's your report. So those reports aren't, you are dealing with a threat actor or a criminal at the end of the day. And although a lot of them behave like a business, they don't, I think, have the same standards that a lot of businesses run when it comes to providing information back to you, accurate information back to you about what happened.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I think given time, we should just move on to some of these other misconceptions. So, review thus far, ransomware is dying. It's not dying. It's evolving. It's still a daily thing. We consultancies work ransomware cases constantly. It's not really going anywhere. Payment is not a magic bullet. And yes, I took your quote. Yeah, we discussed it in class, but I like that exact phrase. Payment is not a magic bullet at all. So the next two, I'm going to kind of combine them, if you will. And it's, a lot of people believe, again, who are people? The people, all the people out there in the world, that first off, only very large organizations suffer ransomware attacks, or that they're even targeted. And then the other one is that only critical industries suffer attacks. So I like to kind of combine those in, but yet keep them, as separate statements, if you will. And I think commentary on this for me, and then Mary, I'll go to you, is that I wrote the labs in Forensics 528 around an extermination company that only has a couple different sites and is more of a local extermination company. I did not use something like we may use in other SANS courses where it's this, weapons manufacturer or this critical infrastructure. Now, don't get me wrong, ransomware hits critical infrastructure, sure. And the, Biden administration just on March 2nd put out some additional information about the path forward for cybersecurity. There's a couple executive orders that are being tapped on, and there's some things that they're doing for that. But I specifically chose a small, right, extermination company, because you have to understand that anyone who has internet accessible servers, essentially, or devices, not just servers, is susceptible to being hit by ransomware, to get a ransomware crew into the organization. For that matter, initial access brokers, IABs, I always call them intrusion. Their whole job is to just get into environments, and then once they're there, to get the lay of the land, and then kind of spread that around and try to get someone to bite, either to purchase or to, try to share proceeds from whatever attacks can be done after that. Anyone and everyone can be hit with ransomware, and the impact of that can still be grand. So my example of the extermination company, let's say that, I had my kid in daycare for a number of years. Let's say a daycare has to shut down because the extermination company can't get out there. What's the impact of that? Now, how many parents have to go pick up their children? And then what happens at those individual jobs and all those people are gone? That's just one example, let alone the fact that this extermination company was commercial extermination. There's that, right? And so they're doing things like hospitals and lodging, closing down a hotel overnight. Like, good luck with that. So, Mary, what are you seeing? What are your thoughts on it's not just these big names, luxury car manufacturers, one of which may have been announced last night. I won't mention who. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I've seen things like nonprofits be hit, schools, and a lot of times it comes down to a lot of these smaller companies just don't have the IT resources. The larger companies, a lot of times they'll already have the endpoint threat monitoring in place. They have a full-time IT staff dedicated to securing the environment, whereas these smaller companies, they might have a consultant that comes in maybe once a month and they give them a list of things to do. So they don't have those updates being pushed out all the time and they're just susceptible. And if I remember right, Ryan, didn't you like when you set up your lab, it got hit like right away with ransomware, right? And you are definitely not like a large company that they were targeting. They are casting this wide net and they're just going to go and they're going to hit whoever they can as quickly as they can. Now they might adjust how much ransomware, how much money they're asking for based on the size of the company. But, everybody is susceptible, whether you are putting out a honeypot or whether you are, a large corporation or a small corporation, they don't care. They're just going to do, they're just seeing whoever, they can get in and compromise.
Heather, do you remember when I turned in my first set of slides and it was like slide 2 or 3 and like the title was ransomware sucks. And then the next thing was, why does ransomware suck? And it was like, see next page. And it was a big screenshot of our range that we set up for the class. I totally forgot about that. The range was up for maybe 8 to 10 hours while I slept, purposefully insecure, so our red team could come in. And I thought to myself, how funny would it be if someone did something silly in the range, right? Well, that silly, it literally was ransomed. I woke up the next day, talked to the red team, and was like, did you do that? And they're like, no, we didn't do that. Like, oh, wow. Okay, cool story. So yeah, anyone with an internet presence, it's, ugh. All right. And then time-wise, I want to hit more on how many of these small businesses, dentist's office and things that, I've either worked the cases or seen them come into groups, ours or some like them, former job, whatever. But I think you get the idea there. So the last one here is that, and this, don't get me wrong. So I have a caveat here. So hold for a second. Security services, systems, and infrastructure protect organizations from ransomware. Now, do systems like an EDR or an XDR protect against ransomware? Well, yes. Are they going to outright prevent ransomware? No. So how do you outright prevent ransomware? It's the entire ecosystem. I think I've already used that term on this call, but that's all right. So the entire business, all these security 101 practices have to be in place. It doesn't matter how great your XDR system is, right? I work for a company that makes one. I think it's pretty awesome. But if you have your domain controller exposed to the internet with a domain admin account with a horrible password, and the threat actor just logs in and is able to be like, wee, and start, doing whatever they want, how much of your system is really going to protect you? So the idea is that you can't just go out and buy a single system or try to throw some security systems into the mix without having the human intelligence and people and the changes to your processes to avoid ransomware. So Mary, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's funny. I saw this meme the other day on Reddit that was like AI doing a job that someone else used to do, and it had like these hands shaking and it had like 8 fingers on it and 10 fingers on it, and it just looked like something funky AI might generate based on its interpretation. I think at the end of the day, it's always so important to have that human element. And, humans a lot of times tend to be the weakest link. I've worked cases before where they'll fat finger an IP address that's supposed to be blocked when they know a threat actor is coming in from it. And, so the tooling, needs to be set up properly. It's that defense in depth. You need to have multiple things going on. And a lot of times, even when you have these toolings in place, the threat actors will get in, but they don't make it through all the phases that they need to get to where they launch that ransomware. So even when you have these tools in place, sometimes an investigation needs to be done to understand, okay, we had all these tools in place, where did they end up coming in and what can we do to make things even stronger and better? So, it's like when you have your house and you're trying to protect your house. You can have an alarm system, but someone still might, break through that window and have enough time to grab something. They might not get all the way back to the safe and get, the crown jewels, but they were still able to bust a window and grab the TV, off the wall before that alarm went off and, and get out of there. So it's a constant battle. We always need to be on our toes. We always need to be looking at, our security measures that we're putting in place, making sure that our logging's in place and that our people are properly trained up on the latest and greatest, so that, we can be doing the Wile E. Coyote and the sheep herder thing back and forth every single day. It's never going to get to a point where, we're not constantly being vigilant about our security measures.
That very well said. Is this being recorded? I'm going to steal a lot of that too. I'm going to steal some of that from my class runs coming up. Yeah, you can just throwing a product in an environment. Okay, do you have eyes on it? Do those eyes know what they're even looking for? Something like living off the land type of command, just a net user command, or who am I? Like, how normal should those be? And security systems can say, hey, that was running over there, right? Even if they have user behavior enabled, like, hey, that user's never run that command, right? That user's not an admin. That user just logged in from a country they've never logged in before. Those types of things, you still need someone, a human, with eyes on the prize. And that is exactly what we try to do in Forensics 528. So it's the 3-day curriculum is all about getting you prepared to truly understand what to be looking for, what type of systems you need, what type of visibility you need. And that's the big thing for me when engaging with any type of ransomware incident is what's our visibility? And if your visibility is, we have 24 hours of firewall logs, and we've got there's no ADR, we can't see what processes ran in the environment, we haven't adjusted our event logs for anything over the standard 20 megabytes for the security log, like all these, you're like, ooh, okay, you then come in and say, well, our capability is going to be kind of like because of things that have not been done to set the environment up. And that's a big part of what we talk about in the course. And then on day 4 of the course, it's a hands-on capture the flag event. And it's basically, we carried out 2 completely different attacks in the course. And the idea is, can you respond to this? Can you find the answers using all the things you learned in the class? So I thank you very much, Mary and Heather, for hanging out today. I really appreciate it. I'm not sure if we have time for some questions. I think we do. I think we could pull some questions in. Let's see.
I'd like the one about the admin having liability insurance for ransomware individually. So could a company, sounds like what you're asking is, could a company hold a specific employee liable if they did something? And I mean, I just had some thoughts on this because I think it's a really interesting question. One of the things I immediately think about, and that I see a lot, is a lot of times administrators and people in the IT department ask and want the budget to do a lot of security implementations, and they're not given the backing by upper management to do that. So I think there might be this question of, well, is it the admin's fault if they didn't authorize the EDM management tool because, upper management didn't think that it was necessary? Or, is the IT admin so short-staffed that they're spending more time responding to tickets than they are implementing security measures? So then, who's, I think it would be really difficult, from I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but from a legal perspective, if I was an IT admin and something happened, I'd be like, well, I've been telling you need to do this for years. Like, this isn't my fault. And I could see like a lot of finger pointing going on. I just thought that was a really interesting question, and some food for thought on that.
That is interesting. And for that matter, what about the user who clicks the phishing email? Right? That user could be in are we going to blame that user? Like, oh, you clicked one thing and that ended up being, $17 million down the line. Like, ooh, that's interesting. The insurance. Oh, that's a whole future episode. I was about to tap into insurance, cybersecurity insurance. That's a whole different thing. I'll pause on that little one. Any other cool questions we saw posted in here? I'm scrolling. Oh, someone.
What about this one? What is the one biggest deterrent of ransomware? I'm interested in hearing that, selfishly.
The biggest deterrent. Okay, so not for not necessarily
to not get ransomed, I would assume.
I would say user training. And when I say user training, I don't just mean user like, I do spreadsheet stuff, I'm a user. I mean all user training. Now that's cute for me to say because I'm like, hey, take my class. Right? Training is the most important. No. I mean, establishing that this is a threat, establishing that this is a thing, and all of us play a part in this, right? The big 3 are basically phishing and remote desktop protocol. And then you've got software exploitation, right? Now you might be thinking, well, software exploitation, that, no, user training, the IT organization. Like, what's your patch cycle? You know, how long is it, and what are you patching, and what do you even have? Like you were saying, Mary, right? What systems do you even own at this point? Where are they? What servers are in closets? What are they running? All just the general things you need to be aware of, and especially the phishing-based training and also password hygiene stuff for users, because that applies to RDP, right? Remote connectivity via VPNs and things like that. So I would say just general overall training on what the heck is this threat. You know, we at SANS do some of these Ask an Instructor things internally where we meet with some of our larger clients, and they basically just say, hey, we just want to know what the heck ransomware really is, right? And why, and what we can do about it. And the we is like everyone. Those types of talks, I highly recommend that you organize them in your organizations. And if you're in IT security, or if you're in, you know, identity management, or if you're in HR and you're watching this right now and you don't have some type of training in your environment, new hire training, whatever, like go try to fix that. Just, you know, get the word out. Like, we should get more people aware of the overall threat, because it is a threat. Mary, what do you think?
I would agree. And I really like your answer. I was like kind of formulating an answer in my head, and I like yours so much better, because it's like the users start here and then it kind of matriculates down from there, right? Like everything starts up here and then it goes down. So you know, as we were talking before, you can buy all of these tools like endpoint threat monitoring, but if your employees and your staff are not trained in how to respond to those, how to recognize what's good from bad, the false positives, that's not going to do you any good. So at the end of the day, we still all have job security, because I think you're right. It all kind of starts with the user and the user training, and you can have all these tools in place, but without a proper understanding of them and implementation of them and understanding and recognizing threats, they're not going to do you any good at all.
Thank you. Thank you. That made me happy. It's like, yeah, good answer. Yeah.
That was a great answer.
I gave a good answer. Yay. So time-wise, we're getting close to the 40-minute mark. I think we want to hit 40 to 45 max on these, because I think the three of us on this call, we could just open it up and just go forever, basically. So, you know, here's a good question I see here. Backups are the best form of recovery. What is the expected data loss? Because it's going to be a matter of opinion, BIA with management. So backups, we trained ourselves, we, the royal we in the industry, trained ourselves that in order to deal with ransomware, what do? You back up. You implement backup systems that are strong, and you ensure that you have backups and so on and so forth. Where that's becoming problematic is that the old way of I just need to have backups, it no longer cuts it. Threat actors target backup systems. In the class, we show how they scan for specific ports for management interfaces to backup systems. We show, like, look, they're looking to see if you have that system. And if they find it, they're going to get it. You know, they're using specific tools. Like, I'll throw the name out there. I highly respect this backup system. Veeam is a really solid backup. I like it personally. You know who else likes it? A lot of people around the world. And thus, you know who likes it? Ransomware actors. They love to see if it's in the environment. And they use specific tools to try to get the passwords out of them and then destroy your backups. So backups have now gone from, well, you just have some backups. Well, backup systems are being encrypted like crazy in these cases. They're being outright destroyed. Volume shadow copies are one of the first things to go when the encryptor itself starts to run. So in the class, we teach things like immutable backup. And if you go to FOR528.com/Coveware, COVEWARE, there's a really good article that discusses the payments going down in terms of ransom payments to threat actors. And one of the things that they mention there is that there's actually an infographic or a chart, whatever you want to call it, showing that searches for immutable backup have been going up over the past, whatever the time frame is, year or so. And if you're not using that, like write once, read many, or worm, or immutable backup, go look that up. It's something we cover in the class to avoid threat actors from being able to stomp on that data. Also, offsite backups are important. Anyways, where I'm getting is if your backup system is on premises, or if it's very thoroughly and easily connected to the service accounts that a ransomware actor probably is going to compromise, then you can't put a whole lot of stake in, the backups will be safe. No, because they're very much targeting those. Mary, what have you seen in terms of backups that were great at one point and then?
Yeah, so many times it is, when we get on that initial scoping call, we're walking through the client. Okay, what happened? What's going on? It's always like, well, we need to check the backups. So we don't know what kind of state the backups are in. And ultimately, a backup file will end up being corrupted, or they find out that a major system was last backed up a year ago. And for whatever reason, an upgrade was made here, something changed here, and oh, we don't have a backup of this. So it's very rare that I've worked a case where they have been able to restore every single thing that they've needed from backup. I think the one time it happened, I almost fell out of my chair because I was like, what? You have all your backups, and then having them off site at the same time. And then kind of how we mentioned before at the beginning, even if you are able to restore from backup, you still need to be able to answer those questions. How did they get in? What did they take? What else did they do while they were there? What do I need to do to make my environment secure moving forward?
Yeah, always remember you're dealing with thieves. You're dealing with criminals.
Mm-hmm.
So taking their word, oh, we did these exact things. Oh, okay. No. No. You don't want to do that. All right, Heather, anything to add before we wrap up here? What do you think?
No, I just want to mention, actually, I said no, and then yes. I just want to mention one thing. It was just posted in the chat channel. If you're looking for a more affordable way to possibly get some SANS training, you can do work study, which means you help the instructors, you facilitate the class, and it's a great way to get yourself into a classroom for a little bit less or a lot less, depending on how you look at it. There's also scholarships that get handed out at the DFIR Summit, so you can always apply for those. But there are ways you can always reach me, and I can try to help you. But you two are fantastic. Thank you for doing this.
Awesome. Thank you for being here and hanging out with us. And so this is something we hope to do monthly going forward. Ideas of, there's plenty of ideas, plenty of things we want to talk about. So if anyone has any ideas, feel free to reach out, and you can reach most of us on Twitter. Is that where you prefer to be contacted? I do. I just do the Twitter thing. So yeah, I think that's it. We don't have a grand finale. The grand finale is basically thank you very, very much. Thank you, Mary, for being here. Thank you, Heather, for hanging out. And thank you, Stephen, in the background for doing your thing as always and making sure that everything goes smoothly. So hopefully we'll get this going monthly, and we'll see you again soon.